So excited to be here today. We are doing this thing finally here at the Artistic Recovery 320. So excited to be here. My name is Michael Plebanski. I'm your host. So blessed to be your host. And we are going to be talking about recovery today. And I got to say, I am so excited for our first guest. Actually elated. And she is a friend. She's a mentor. She is a powerful force in the recovery community, probably more than she knows. And so I would love to introduce Amber Hensel Hicks. How are you doing today?
Good to see you, Mike. It's been a while, so happy to be here and happy to be doing this thing is exactly right. So this is kind of 10 years in the making, and here we are.
So excited to be here. What we're doing here is recovery, and I think with those podcasts too, what I recognized was that there was a huge misconception between treatment and recovery. Being a therapist, I'm extremely passionate about treatment. Being in recovery,
Yeah.
I'm extremely passionate about recovery, and I understand those differences. So why are we here? Like, what's the difference? What's going on? What's the difference between treatment and recovery?
Well, I think that that's a solid point to start, and we hear it all the time in the community. And I think that we hear it in places often that you think that people would be more educated in the know and that they would know the difference. But I guess one thing that we could start with is treatment has a beginning and an end. So that's the most simplified way that I could say
Most
that, right?
definitely. Like when clients go into treatment, which is completely necessary, right?
Right.
For with this disease. There's a beginning, there's a treatment plan, there's an end.
Absolutely.
And at the end of that program,
Recovery should be starting. So I guess the other thing that sets apart treatment and recovery is treatment is provided for people that are currently using substances, and they want to stop. So that would be one place that we could start. Even in the recovery community, we still see that. People come in and they're like, yeah, I want to be a part of your recovery community. And we find, well, actually what you need is treatment.
Yes.
And they should go hand in hand, absolutely. The other difference we need to draw attention to is treatment is provided by well-trained, educated professionals that bring their credentials to the table.
Most definitely.
And so when people go, hey, I'm going to go over, no knock against NA and AA because it saved millions of lives,
and
no
it's so
question
important.
about
It's
it,
a
and we
huge
need
part of
it.
the recovery process.
Absolutely. But it's not treatment. It is provided by peers with lived experience. So as far as the credentials go with people that provide treatment, that could be anywhere from a certified substance abuse addiction counselor, master level therapists, social workers, and so forth. So let's put that aside. That's treatment, beginning and end for people that are currently using or abusing. And when we say treatment, we're talking specifically about a substance use disorder.
Okay.
Because, we're talking
We're
about
clarifying
recovery
it, yes.
from knee surgery?
Yes.
Treatment for knee surgery?
Yes, there's a lot.
So let's clarify that
Yes.
piece. So the other part with treatment that could include is it could be going to detox. It could be intensive outpatient. It could be a longer term doing individual sessions. So that's, I think, the biggest issue on the treatment side before we move on to recovery, Mike, is, and I know that you have to experience this. It's like, oh, so I brought Billy and he came in and he did your program or he went to detox. Ta-da,
Yeah,
we're done.
And we've experienced this, and I think me and you've talked about this.
Yeah.
And as a therapist, it's heartbreaking for families, and that's why. And we'll even dive into that, family recovery, how important that
Yeah,
is.
in a later
But like
section.
we've seen, people have come to treatment, been able to stop using, complete a program, and their family thinks that it's okay now to start using again because they completed a program. They don't understand the longevity of remission, recovery. This is a lifelong
Absolutely.
situation.
I think that you shared at one point a story about a family that, it's like, okay, so I went to detox for 10 days. You got the crap out of your system.
Yeah.
And detox that's a great place to start. You got the
Yes.
crap out of your system.
Yes.
And they have unrealistic expectations that they're going to go home, and now somehow this guy or he or she, they're somehow fixed.
Yeah.
And I think you shared a story
yes,
about a family.
And so the person, the
Yeah.
client completed, and the family threw a party for him.
with the kegger.
Yes. And so that just goes to show, and this isn't a family that was, hey, we don't care, it's
Right.
whatever. This was a
Loving.
family that was loving, engaged.
Yes. And I think
Yes.
that in the simplest terms, we could think of recovery as remission. That's the goal, right? That
Most
somehow
definitely,
we're,
just
we're
like-
in remission.
When we look at it, addiction as a disease, it's just like any other disease. If you have diabetes and you're on insulin for 2 years, and you've started exercising and checked your diet, and the doctor says, hey, you could get off the insulin. You don't go straight and get a dozen Krispy Kreme and start.
At least you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. You're in recovery. You're in remission. You're still going to maintain the things
Yes.
that you need to maintain to complete a healthy lifestyle.
So I guess we could say that treatment has a beginning and end, and recovery is forever. It is forever.
Most definitely.
Over the last.
But and also, let's put this way: that recovery looks different forever in different ways, and that changes over time too.
Absolutely,
and that
and it
scares the
should.
crap out of people when you say, "Hey, this is a lifelong thing," without saying, "Hey, this is a lifelong thing that's going to be great. It's
Yeah.
going to change along the way," and that's the idea of recovery. It's constantly evolving.
And I think in the beginning, we don't even talk about forever, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the
Yeah, one
the
day at
whole
a
value
time,
of
you
one
know,
day at a
the-
time really does
yeah.
play into that.
For sure.
I think it's been interesting over the last 20 years, but certainly in the last 10 years, there's just been a huge focus, and the word is overused with movement, but it's absolutely true, a movement focusing on recovery, and recovery that's more than just NA and AA. So like I said, I'm passionate about NA and AA,
For
and
sure,
we need it.
and you keep mentioning A and NA when you say like this movement. I mean, how many 12-steps do we have now? And it's wonderful. I mean, there's really one for every
Absolutely.
lane. You know,
Yep,
whether it's a
yep.
faith-based, whether it's AA, NA. I mean, all of them. And it's about finding what's going to work for you, because what works for one person may not work for the next.
So
Recovery.
with multiple pathways, it sounds kind of hippy-dippy. Like
I think it sounds cool.
multiple
I like
pathways.
It. But I think it's
So-
so. As soon as you first started talking to me about multiple pathways, I was like, yes.
So we could call it anything. We could say
It should
multiple
be called
options.
no cookie cutter.
There you go.
Everybody is going to have a different lane that's going to work for them, and you got to have that. You got to find that passion,
Long
that
term,
purpose.
you do the multiple pathways, which really pretty much sums it up. Not just multiple pathways that are provided in a professional setting with trained professionals with lived experience. And that's the other part of the nugget that we want to get. So it's not just anyone that provides these
Sure. So,
services.
and I think this is important to talk about too. So you're taking and with people in self-help groups, AA and NA. AA and NA. I'm a huge believer. You know.
Yeah.
But people get really nervous when you start talking about recovery, and now we're got professionals too. You know, it's like, well,
Why isn't that treatment?
yeah, why isn't that's
Let's talk
treatment.
about that.
And I
Why
think it's
it-
so because it's so well needed.
Well, and it's not treatment.
It's not
because
treatment,
we're
it's
not addressing-
recovery.
That's right.
It's
We're
recovery.
focusing exclusively on
Most
people that are
definitely.
no longer abusing.
They're no longer using.
They're
and
no
and
longer
actually made
relapsing?
Yeah, they're not relapsing. They're on a path.
Yes, they're on the path. And so from time to time, that happens. We'll come across someone, of course, and they have a lapse. But that's where recovery comes to play. Maybe that person doesn't have to get back into treatment
No,
because they've
sure,
had a
'cause
brief lapse, but
most-
they definitely need the recovery component to
Because
come
yeah,
alongside.
a brief lapse does not require that you're going to have to go back through all
Yeah.
the complete treatment. Because like you said, if you have a really strong recovery,
Yes.
you could jump right back in. It's like getting back on the horse.
So I'm sure, Mike, in your industry, being a therapist, you talk about remove and replace. I think that kind of lays the foundation, treatment, then we go to recovery with the principle of remove and replace. What does that mean to you, remove and replace?
I think it's recovery from this disease as a whole. That's what it's all about. And I think we talk about that so much in treatment. Recognize, remove, replace.
Remove
And-
what?
Removing
Removing all the junk.
All the
Yeah.
junk. And people and what we talk about is people think, well, I stopped using.
I'm good.
Okay, what? Well, you're still negative behaviors. Toxic relationships. All these other things. You got to remove but also this. People recognize it because maybe therapists, families said, hey, there's something going on here that ain't working. They remove the substance. They don't replace anything.
Or what do you even do with your time?
Yeah.
So if that behavior, that
Time,
could be
money,
time consuming.
and
Yes.
everything.
So I think that's a big part of the multiple pathways. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about
sure.
the whole remove and replace.
And replacing with these multiple pathways.
So in addition to that, though, I think there has to be some criteria that we, before we talk about the multiple pathways. What if my pathway is I want to become a seriously avid popcorn eater, right? So there's more to it than just with remove
By the
and
way, I
replace.
love popcorn.
I love
Go
popcorn
ahead.
too. Maybe that's why I picked it.
All right.
Maybe that's why. but-
Indiana produces more popcorn than any place in the world. But go
Okay,
ahead.
Mike. So with the whole remove and replace, it has to, the criteria is, we're working on rewiring our brain
Most definitely.
and the reward system.
which
That
which
is-
somebody would learn in treatment.
That's right.
That's a huge part of it, understanding the brain side of the disease, and then recovery,
That's right. So now we're going to focus on something that rewires our reward system, that replaces that behavior that we had before, or time seeking, or people that we're hanging out with, or what have you. And so as we're replacing and our brain is healing, but it has to have some sort of therapeutic value in order for it to really count as one of the pathways.
Sure.
But there is no beginning and end. There's no, I think there's not the exhaustive list of multiple pathways. And so I think about friends over the years and kind of debates that you would have about what those multiple pathways could look like. So let's start with the number one that we keep circling back to, and it's NA and AA. That is a pathway.
So, and when we say NNAA, we're saying self-supporting
Yes.
self-help groups. Yeah.
And the most predominant common thread for people in successful recovery is people that incorporated faith into their recovery.
Yeah.
Boom. So another one that we see a lot that we certainly use as part of our community is fitness and exercise. So
Another huge role in the recovery process for a lot of people.
So let's talk about that. And so with fitness and recovery, that's relevant.
Most
That's
definitely.
long term. That's real stuff.
Yes.
We're not there yet as a culture, as a
Sure.
country, that people would be like, what, that's not recovery. But for some people, maybe they're going to take off running and they're going to become a marathon runner. It keeps them sober. It keeps them.
Yes.
It keeps them to that. It takes them to that plate of remission
Yeah.
and getting to that 5 years of not using. So I think exercise can be all over the place. What that looks like.
Yeah. And I mean, and most definitely, when we're talking about exercise, again, that starts even these days with integrated care and the treatment process.
It should.
And it has to, like we see, be one of the multiple pathways in recovery
Yeah.
for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
But yes. So.
Well, there was another study. 'Cause
She is full of studies.
I write grants.
Yes.
So I'm always studying, and when you really get down to the nitty gritty, you want to know, is this real? Does it work? How can you prove that to me? And the study was done, and this was also done in Germany, and it was over 1 million people. And what they did is they studied sports, they studied fitness, they studied just people incorporating sports for depression. And so that would be a big component, right? For
Huge.
people that are in recovery.
Yes.
It's 90, I don't know what the percentage is, but 99% of the time, depression could be part of successful recovery, but getting the brain healed and all of that good stuff. So what I thought was really exciting and people should be encouraged by. By the way, I'm not one of those I don't believe in medicine. I'm an advocate of medicine
Yes.
when necessary, but if we could do it naturally and more holistic, that's even better. Why not?
A holistic approach, yes.
Yep. So with this study, what they found after, like I said, 1,000 people participating is collectively the number one most effective sport for fitness to overcome depression was anything as a team sport community. I'm not a team sports guy
Yeah.
or woman. I'm not a guy. Team sport isn't my thing.
Yeah.
I don't even like working out with anyone, including my husband.
So you're an individual. You like it individualized.
But we have studies, we have
Yeah.
factual that when you do team sports, it's something about that happens within the collective
socialization.
community, the socialization, absolutely. So they did this test and they treated people with clinical depression, and some of them took just Zoloft, some took nothing, and some did a combination of Zoloft and exercise. Okay?
Okay.
And at the end of 4 months, they found that the results were equal for people that were taking Zoloft and exercising.
Wow.
But at the end of 6 months, they found that people were exercising only surpassed the people on Zoloft.
Yeah.
So I know you have a good time when you have someone in your practice and you're saying, hey, man, you need to work out. That's part of, how do you handle that, Mike?
Again, it's just part of the one, again, starting in the treatment process, but following up in the recovery process. It's one of those things that really, all these things, all this engagement, it's about engagement. But I think the socialization that we've seen when people get involved in team sports or just, something healthy is pretty powerful.
So maybe playing basketball isn't your gig, right?
Yeah.
Go on
Well,
a bike ride.
it's my gig, though,
It is
'cause
your
I
gig.
don't
I
miss.
remember that.
And that's why it's so
maybe
funny
it's a bike
because
ride.
your multiple pathways, I mean,
Yeah.
every single one is spot on.
So I imagine when you're sitting down and you're doing your treatment plan, we're sitting down and we're doing a recovery plan, and someone is just like, you're trying to help them get out of that whole depression mode, and we're saying, hey man, exercise could be one of your pathways. I hate exercise, I'm not gonna do it. Then we kind of pivot and go, maybe you take a bike ride.
Yeah,
Maybe you don't play basketball, take a bike ride.
Sure, and
Go-
it's just like within that, it's really, again, just like we said, you have to explore your pathway.
Yeah.
And each pathway, sometimes you have to explore what's in there.
Yeah,
You're
that's
right.
good-
Not
that's a
everyone-
good point.
I've seen a lot of people, basketball is definitely not, some people say, okay,
Right.
maybe jogging is it, maybe it's yoga, maybe
Right.
there's so much out there, but again, it's about sticking through the process. If you try something, it doesn't work, guess what? Geez, there's so much more out there. If yoga doesn't work, man, try this. And, here at 320, there's so many of these pathways available and to get people started in that.
Which, another pathway that I think that you could speak to better than I is the whole pathway of incorporating music. So before you lunch in, I gotta tell you that I had a friend who was a drummer, and, oh my gosh.
I love drummers. By
We-
the way,
You love
it isn't.
everything,
I
Mike.
do
You
love everything, but there's something about drummers I just can't get past.
Okay, well, shout out to the drummers.
Shout out to the drummers out there.
But this particular guy, this is a long time ago, before I was really even in the field of addiction and recovery. It was drumming. That's what he used. He was a cocaine binger. And that's how he worked his way out of it. And not only did he become an amazing drummer, but he truly has been in successful recovery now for over a decade.
Sure.
So share with a little bit about how you
Well,
think that whole music thing ties in.
And geez, you know how passionate I am about music. The universal language of everything
Yeah.
goes through music. And again, again with all these pathways, it's just about utilizing that, how you need to utilize it. In therapy, recovery, we've seen people, they found it by singing. Some
Yeah.
people picked up a guitar. Some people the drumming. Some people it's a bongo. Some people it's learning to how to record and
Yeah,
mix with that.
yeah.
I mean, but again, the science, the spirituality, it's all wrapped up in music. And
It could be, I can't play an instrument, and I
Yeah.
definitely can't sing.
so, and
But you know what, I could write song lyrics.
Yeah.
That's so therapeutic.
yeah, and I mean, and again, even like you were saying with the socialization thing, music is socialization
Yeah,
too. Because,
yeah.
like you said, you get a group of people together. One person writes, one person could, play the drums. One person can hum. I mean, you can always incorporate everyone into music, which is beautiful.
Could and should.
Could and should, most
And
definitely.
you know-
You know my story. Definitely, the guitar saved my life. That was it. It was.
Had you played guitar before you got into recovery?
I did, but it was, and just like everyone else out there, lost that passion.
Pawned your guitar?
Pawned everything.
I was going on the limb there, Mike.
I pawned my passion.
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah.
But I was blessed, and that's what really started my process. And when the last time I went to treatment, detox, I was blessed to have. I went to a place where it was very cold, it was dark, it was free. It was one of those places, no books, no Bibles, no nothing. It was wake up, groups all day, go back to sleep. But there was a musician counselor there we just kind of started talking. I said, man, I used to love playing Nirvana. So he would sneak in a guitar and put his job in jeopardy, really, to do that. And he would sneak it in at 11 o'clock at night, and he would just come get me. He would say, and I would say, I can't even hold it. I couldn't even play a string.
Really?
He would say, just play it. Just keep on playing, man. It's gonna. And by the time we left, we had wrote some songs together, and
Very
but yeah,
cool.
so
Very cool.
it's definitely one of the pathways, and we've seen. And one of the things I love about music too is it engages everybody. There is nobody who doesn't love music.
And you can
There's a
do
lot
it
of
for
people-
free. You don't have to have a fancy center.
No.
You don't have to have a stage. You
No,
don't
you
have to have a
don't.
building with all of the instruments. It's anywhere, everywhere.
It's in
Everyone
here.
can partake in that, yeah.
Sure. So again, I mean, even like going off the music that we talked about, I mean, we see again, anybody can draw a stick figure. I can draw. I can't draw anything. I could play some chords, but if you ask me to draw something out of it, but we see clients really be able to open up, express, almost get lost, while they're getting lost, and also being able to push out some of that crap that's in there.
You know what I found-
Whether it's a story, whether it's something they went through in their life, they're able to put that, paint it, color it, and its expression. It's getting it out of them and helping them process that. So it's such a powerful tool across the board that we see.
And like you said, you don't have to be necessarily good at it.
No.
It's the completion. So you start a project. I don't
Sure.
care what you're going to do. If it's
Yeah.
making, what do you call the thing that you break with the, No, you
The
make the-
candy. It's got candy in it.
Yeah.
Pinata.
a pinata? Thank
love
you.
pinata.
So what if you're making
A
a
healthy
pinata, right?
pinata.
With your kids or whatever.
That's right.
That is something that I think how it ties into mindfulness, and if I understand mindfulness correctly, and help me out if I'm wrong, it takes our mind, and we're focusing on that thing, that thing, that thing, that
Sure.
thing. He said, she said, blah, blah,
You're
blah,
able
blah.
to shut
And you
that-
just can go, I'm going to focus
Yes.
on this
On
piece.
just
I'm going
this.
to, and practice
I'm gonna be this
being
piece.
mindful
Yes.
and doing something creative
Yeah.
that we know sparks creativity. When our brain sparks creativity, you could see this on an MRI.
Yeah.
It helps us break down and solve problems. Have you ever been like working out and you're like, I gotta write that down.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. I'm like, I gotta write that down. That's such a good idea. It's when I get my best ideas.
Sure.
So again, even if you're not an artist, that would be another one. And then I think the last one on the list for what we do collectively that I think, and we very purposely have focused on things you can do anywhere in the world.
Everywhere. Back
And the last
pocket.
one would be nutrition and incorporating nutrition. There's a saying that, your day's only going to be as good as what you ate yesterday. And so what we do, and you could get a bit more in depth about it, is certainly by educating people about how they can incorporate nutrition. Most people know that if you don't eat well, you're going to feel like crap.
Yeah.
But
Most
do they?
people know a lot of things and they keep doing it.
Exactly.
But we've seen, and of course you've seen just the transition of when people change their diets. Even we've had
gosh.
clients, treatment and recovery, where you've introduced the clean cooking programs and just really this idea of nutrition to the addiction. And I think back to just the one client, and he ended up changing it for his whole family.
Yeah.
So he was in recovery, and he just couldn't get through it. And we kept talking about, are you in the wall stage? Still feeling funky and cloudy. Came to one program and was like, wow, I didn't know you can make food that was healthy and tasted good.
Yeah.
Totally possible. He made this soup that we did in one of our programs. Said, I woke up, I felt wonderful. I had all these medications I'm on, like now all of a sudden I feel great. He's like, I did to my whole family, and they really just changed everything. And I think even one of the kids, like the ADHD went down. Like
Well,
they were so
like you said,
how
it's-
powerful it is.
And it is a process. So we're not
Yes.
going to, they didn't build Rome in a day. We're not going to change these things overnight. But just if you take just a couple of nuggets, like, hey man, are you drinking water? Because that could be a trigger.
simple things,
That could be a
breaking
trigger.
it
Like
down.
you think
Yeah.
you think you're gonna, you start thinking about having a drink, and actually what you really are is thirsty.
I tell this story all the time, to become a therapist and like all those things that you talked about. Tons of schooling, tons
Yeah.
of classes, and of course, great information. Learned so much along the way. And I always say the most important class I ever took of the 4 degrees I have was this basic general nutrition class.
Yeah.
Like before anything.
Life-changing, yeah.
It was just like how important it is that people don't understand. You got to drink your water. You're 85% water. You got to drink it. It's going to make you feel better.
And it makes sense that it could trigger you to drink because you
Sure,
just
and-
know
and
you're
all of that,
thirsty.
yes, and all this tied into addiction and recovery. Like,
Yeah.
everything. If you're just not feeling well, again, going back to the science of it, you're going to go back to what used to make you feel good.
Exactly.
And so
And
you
your
gotta
brain's
find
really
these-
smart like
and
that.
Yeah, we don't. It's crazy how complex.
The
it
other
is.
one I thought that was quite amazing is even, okay, I'm rocky now, I'm doing my thing, and I'm working out, I'm going to be eating better, and the carbs are going to go. And so we're like, well, that's probably not a good idea on the front end of recovery.
Yeah.
Because when all of a sudden, again, if you're the beer drinker and you're just consuming all kinds of carbs all
and
the
all of a
time,
sudden you just
and all of a
cut
sudden
it,
there's no carbs,
you're going to fall over.
well, you're going to trigger more than other
Yeah, and you're
people
gonna-
because
yeah.
your body's going, where do those
Where's the
carbs
carbs
go?
at? Sugar,
So
carbs, all the-
That's not the time to do it. So I think incorporating that as one of the pathways is extremely important. Again, you don't have to have a fancy recovery center to do that. Just look the stuff up, become educated at some of the stuff that we share on our website and
Yeah.
our portal. But the last thing, and we don't have time to get into it today, Mike, and I know that you have some guests lined up, and I just want to encourage
So
everyone.
excited about, and let me
is
say this.
trauma. Trauma.
Man,
so
look at, she just
that's
keeps on going there.
more than what we can get
So-
into today.
So important.
But like you could do all of these pathways. You could go to detox. You could go to
And
inpatient.
if you don't take care of the trauma.
If you don't deal with the root issue, and you pack, let's
I-
just say,
I always say
and you
trauma-
move to
I-
Alaska, if it's the
it's
trauma's
this-
still there.
It's the same thing.
That
And
is
it's
thing.
kind of like, and it goes back to the analogy of, I use this analogy of the houses, because I know a lot of us are visual learners. And when people get into treatment and recovery, the first thing you think of a house, and it looks like, it's beat up. No one's taken care of it for years. They let it go. They pawn the pipes, the copper pipes. Everything's,
Yeah.
And then they get into treatment, and it's only like moving back into the house and in recovery. It's the first thing everybody wants to do, and I understand, I've been there, is you want to paint your house on the outside. You want to make it look nice. You want the windows to look shiny. You want your landscaping to look good.
Yeah.
And the reality is you have to start from the inside. And if you don't start with the root, like trauma, you could paint your house all day. You could paint your recovery. It could be shiny, but if you don't deal with that, it's always going to fester up.
So let's spend some time on that series for sure.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap and close it out, so if, help me out here, it's remove, replace,
Recognize, remove,
rewire.
replace, rewire.
R.
The lion that you are the lioness of recovery. Let me say that.
So
But yes, a lot of R's, and I think
that's a lot of R's.
with
That's
the,
an easy way to remember it.
that is, and I think with the awesome lineup of guests we have coming up, we're really going to be able to dive into all these pathways,
Yes.
see all the different avenues, look at all the lanes, and give people, again, really good information, not the misinformation, not the, hey, did you see that, or it was funny, and blah, 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 and liking this, and liking sending me this. No, hey, and like we're going to close out now. So if you use the resources, find Artistic Recovery online. All these resources we talked about today, AA, NA, all of those things are out there. And when we say share them with people, we don't mean, hey, a text, or this. Sometimes pull people aside, talk to them. You say AA, and you would not be surprised how many people don't know what Alcoholics, they don't know it even means Alcoholics Anonymous, or they think it's something that was on the episode of Shameless. Literally. So it's like, share those resources, and utilize what we have out there. And yeah, we'll continue to keep moving on.
Thank you, Mike.
No, thank you. So thank you, Amber. And excited moving forward.